Hello and welcome. I am Vishal Dahiya. You're watching our special show, India Fights Back, where we talk about steps being taken against the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, recently, the National Expert Group on Vaccine Administration for COVID-19, that is NEGVAC, after comprehensive deliberations, has recommended that vaccines for COVID-19, which have been developed and are being manufactured in foreign countries and which have been granted emergency approval for restricted use by either USFDA, EMA, UK MHRA, PMDA Japan, or which are listed in WHO's emergency use listing, may be granted emergency use approval in India, mandating the requirement of post-approval parallel bridging clinical trial in place of conduct of local clinical trial as per the provisions prescribed under second schedule of the new Drugs and Clinical Trials Rules 2019. So we're going to talk about this aspect today and try and understand how does, this widening the pool of COVID-19 vaccine helps us. Which are the vaccines which will fall under this particular ambit and how soon we'll be able to go ahead and use them and the technical aspects therein as well. And for more on this, we're joined by two distinguished experts. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with Professor N.K. Ganguly is joining us. He's former Director General of Indian Council of Medical Research. We also have with us Dr. Rakesh Aggarwal, Director of Jawaharlal Institute of Postgraduate Medical Education and Research, that is JIPMER, Puducherry. Welcome, both of you, gentlemen. Let me start with you, Dr. Ganguly, and let's start by, making our viewers understand in simpler terms as to what the recent decision of NEGVAC with respect to these other vaccines mean.
Actually, we have almost similar situation like USA. The surge is very big and very high, particularly in 11 states. And there are 3 or 4 super spreader events which cannot be stopped, which are happening now, like Kumbh Mela, election, etc. So under this situation, it is important that we immunize as much population as possible, everyone 18 and above. But even now at this given moment, because of the lack of raw material, manufacturing has been hit. So with these 2 vaccines, we will have a shortage and we will not be able to expand the vaccination. So there's a good idea. We will have more vaccines over here. And many of them have gone through regulatory authorities, which are international regulatory authorities. And most of these vaccines have gone to hundreds of millions of people. So we know their side effects much better. So out of them, I think the Moderna and Pfizer are the 2 which have almost no serious side effect because they use a very small portion of messenger RNA. Major side effects happen because of the spike protein, which all other vaccines have. So these 2 vaccines, although they have been granted, there is a problem that we may not be having it because they are in short supply globally. Like it is, Pfizer is made in Michigan and made in Germany. Even Germany cannot, doesn't have it according to its requirement. European Union controls it. So these 2 vaccines are not available at the moment. This is being made by Genova in India. Recently, 100 crores have been given to that. We should fast track that so that vaccine messenger RNA is available. Okay. CureVac is another messenger RNA which is being made in Germany. It could also be available. But the other 2, like Johnson & Johnson, on which we were depending, has now been put on pause because out of the 6.8 million where it has been given in USA, 6 have developed clotting problems in USA. So it has been put in pause. Till that pause is removed, it will not be available. It's a good vaccine, means it can be given in one shot. So we were hoping a lot on this. The other one, the Sinopharma, which is an attenuated vaccine, this vaccine doesn't work so well. It has gone into the world and it doesn't work so well. The CanBio is which has also adeno 5 in this is there, and it has been used in a lot of other countries, but again we will have to see that how do we do it. Finally, we have the Sputnik vaccine, which has been made available. It is a mixture of adeno 5 and adeno 26, that is Johnson and Johnson. So when it is there, we need to know that whether it also creates clotting problem or not. So although we have a bouquet of vaccine, which is very good news, which will give people choices, that some of them are 90% effective, 95% effective with very few side effects. It will give people choices. They will also be able to enter private market so that anybody who wants to have a vaccine, they might have a vaccine. So I think it's a very good news.
Okay. Dr. Rakesh Aggarwal, your views there on this step, and as Dr. Ganguly is pointing out, that it gives the population a choice, and it also obviously adds to those efforts of immunizing as many people as quickly and as early as possible.
So it's a step forward to improve the availability of vaccines to our population. The vaccines, I think we still need to understand, need to be given to those who are at a high risk of having adverse outcomes. That remains our priority, that will remain our priority, and that is how we have to go. We already have 2 vaccines that are being distributed and a third that has been already approved, the Sputnik 5. This will make available even more vaccines to our country. They could be used to increase the total amount of vaccine available, or though that hasn't been expressly said, but there could be an advantage if there is somebody who's not eligible for one of the available vaccines for any reason, then for them the other vaccine could be available. So that is the purpose. These are vaccines that are approved by stringent national regulatory authorities, those authorities that pay a lot of attention while approving the vaccines, and or by the World Health Organization's emergency use licensing process. So we can be sure, like the WHO's EUL process looks at manufacturing quality, looks at safety, looks at efficacy, effectiveness. So we can be sure that these are good quality vaccines. And we do not have to go through a trial beforehand in India. When they are approved, as soon as they come, the initial set of people who receive the vaccine, they would be observed as if they were in a trial, and the results of those will be looked at closely. So that reduces the time it would take once a decision is taken for these vaccines to be used in India. That's a step forward.
I'd like to take this point, which you made just now, Dr. Aggarwal, to Dr. Ganguly as well, to make it understand more clearly. And as I was, saying in the beginning as well, that it says that mandating the requirement of post-approval parallel bridging clinical trial in place of conduct of local clinical trial, something which you're referring to, Dr. Aggarwal, as well. Dr. Ganguly, if you could make us understand, the difference there of these 2 aspects, local clinical trial and the bridging study, and why and how it is being done, and will that have any impact on the efficacy or the safety of these vaccines being used, being talked about, if they are being allowed to be used in India?
Actually, the vaccines which have been listed, some of them have gone to close to 100 million or more people. So there, because during trial you do in 44,000, 45,000, you don't get the side effects of the entire population, because population already has different disadvantages, like those who are in blood thinners, those who have clotting problems, etc. So 7 days is just being a little bit sure that our population is doing it. It doesn't mean more than that. But we should study in depth that what are the results, and we should get those results of the phase 4 introduction thing, which have been done in the different countries, and study them. And thereby, as Dr. Aggarwal has said, I agree with that there will be populations who will not be, who will have some problem with one of the vaccines. So those people can opt for the other vaccine, because many times people ask which one we will take. We say that you can take both at this given moment. But at that time, the physicians, doctors will be able to make a choice. But one thing I want to say, that those above 45, they are not the spreader of the disease. This virus is a very, very peculiar virus. Those who, in other infections, those who are infected, they are the major spreader of the disease. Here, the people 29 and above who don't show much symptoms, they are the spreader of the disease. Now, after we have protected 45 and above, our main issue will be that somehow or other protect the population and protect the transmission. For that, we need to give it to everyone above 18. But now we have 12 to 15 years included into this, so we can give to the university students also, so that we can open our universities, or the teachers, so that we can open our schools and make investment. But ultimately, I think that this will give us an opportunity to expand the eligible people, because many, like UK has immunized 92% of its population. USA has given at least one shot to 67%. The 69% has been done in Serbia, and Israel has also very high immunization. They are small countries, but US has done it, UK has done it, and many other Middle Eastern countries have immunized. So that is the real rationale. If we have vaccine, problem was that we didn't have vaccine. If we have vaccine, we will like to stop the transmission, and thereby we can open up our economy better, because it is very difficult for people to do behavioral changes. Whatever we say, the people are not able to do that. So it is one of the most difficult things. So if we have a vaccine and we can give it to people, all eligible people, and eligibility now has expanded. Very soon we will have children eligibility data also. The pregnant woman eligibility data is already there. So we will have some comfort zone.
Okay. Dr. Aggarwal, do you agree with that point which Dr. Ganguly is making in terms of, expanding the ambit of vaccination with, more vaccines in our pool? More vaccines get added, we will have more options, and perhaps we can then start expanding the ambit as well.
Mr. Dahiya, I think we have an expert group that is looking at it, and I don't think, this is a debate that should happen in public space. That should be left to the experts who are managing. We have to remember that we may have opened it to more than 45 years. 30% of our population at least is above the age of 45. That means of 130 crores, we have nearly 40 crores who are in that age group. We are nowhere near having immunized them. We have given about 10 crore doses, including both first and second, right? So we are not close to that. First, we have to increase coverage in them, cover a large proportion of that. Only then will it be gradually moved down. I think that's something that you and I in such programs should not be looking at. That should be left to people who are managing the program.
No, Dr. Aggarwal, what we're trying to understand here is that how will this new set of vaccines which are added to the pool be utilized? How will this help us? Will it be just to go ahead and push the vaccination process for the people who are right now eligible above the age of 45? Or is there a possibility of increasing the ambit as well once we have more resources, as Dr. Ganguly is pointing out?
So it will depend on, so we may approve them. It will also depend on how much those companies will be able to supply to us. That will also depend on that, right? It will also depend on how people in the age groups, older age groups, come forward to take vaccine. So all those are things which it's a dynamic process. I don't think that can be decided today. It will depend on how much our other companies that are already supplying us are able to increase their production. This is a dynamic process. That is exactly what I'm trying to emphasize. It is, yes, when we have spare, surely we have seen other countries started with 80 plus, then they went to 75 plus, 70 plus. We started with 60 plus, we've come to 45 plus. As we go along, surely NEGVAC will bring that limit down. But will it happen in one stage? Will it happen in two stages? This is a dynamic decision, and that will happen over time. I don't think, we can be saying or recommending what should be done, because it has to be a very calibrated approach.
Indeed, it has to be, and that is something which, as you're pointing out, will be a dynamic decision based on the situation, based on the availability of vaccines, as well as what's happening on the ground there, what is required to be done. Pretty much clear. Dr. Aggarwal, one more thing, your views there on that previous aspect, which you pointed out in your first response, and I went back to Dr. Ganguly in terms of ensuring the safety and efficacy of these vaccines, which are being approved now, being approved by other regulators, international regulators, and as NEGVAC has decided that they can be allowed with the bridging study or bridging trials out there. How will we assess that?
So what is classically done is, before we approve the vaccine, we ask the company to bring in some vaccine, give it to about, say, 1,000, 2,000 people in India, collect the results, present those results to the regulator, and again it is assessed, and then the vaccine is approved.
Mm-hmm.
What is being done here is that they bring in the vaccine, and when it starts getting used in the initial people, say for the first 7 days, 10 days, we monitor them very closely. And this is, the testing goes on as we are starting to use it. Instead of making it into a two-step process, it has become a one-step process. We are, of course, cautious during that period. If there is anything, then we stop. The advantage, the difference is that these vaccines, as Professor Ganguly pointed out, have already been given to hundreds of millions of people already, and we know that they are pretty safe. Also, if the question is that whether in people of Indian origin, genetic constitution as we have, will it be safe?
Mm-hmm.
So these vaccines have been, let's say, Pfizer and Moderna have been used in US for so many people, and a large number among them are of Indian origin. And they have been tried there, so we already have data available. Those data will be looked at before the approval is given. So what NEGVAC has done is, and the government of India has done is, change the regulatory framework slightly. Of course, the subject expert committee, when the data would be presented, it does not say that all such vaccines stand approved. They said, it just says may be approved. So they will look at the data, they will take individual decision based on each vaccine, and based on what data were made available to those regulatory authorities and the data that have become available thereafter while in the programs of other countries.
Okay, so it looks like we're adding more options to our basket here to try and look at, to try and pick and choose based on the data which is there and what suits us in terms of the situation, the ongoing situation. Dr. Ganguly, your views there, the way both of you are explaining, Dr. Aggarwal just explained it in minute detail. You also spoke about how a clinical trial and a bridging study is. In those terms, if we have to look, and also given the fact that these companies which are manufacturing all these vaccines, they already have their previous commitments as well to live up to in terms of the kind of number of vaccines which they are manufacturing and delivering to the orders which are already booked. So if we have to understand the timelines, it'll be some time before we will have these options in real terms available on the ground.
Real term, Vishal, I already in my first thing I said, actually whatever I have expressed here later on, NEGVAC or Government of India has accepted. My aim is here to use the global data and make some suggestions and forecast to the government and others, which they could consider and accept or others. So here the main issue is here. The desire was always there to immunize the population, larger population as possible. But problem was that availability of vaccine, vaccinators, centers, and also making people to come for vaccination. So we have now crossed a lot of those paths. Even now there is some hesitancy because some reports come about this, about the clotting problem or other problems. So we will have to ensure those things and thereby make a choice. I agree with Dr. Aggarwal because in these 7 days, there is not a bridging study. 7-day study is not called a bridging study. So, bridging studies are larger studies, but it is not like phase 3 and others. 7 days is just getting familiar with the vaccine in Indian population. And as Dr. Aggarwal said, in the UK and USA, there is a large number of ethnic Indian population from all over our spaces, and they have been tested. We have that data also. So we should do that, and we should take an informed decision if there is enough vaccine supply. That is the if. I don't think we will have these vaccine supply even when we allow them to come. They will come immediately. There will be advance orders which will have to be placed. The logistics those companies will have to cover, because for every manufacturer, there are already dates which are booked. So even when we book those dates, like Sputnik is now out licensing it to 5-6 Indian companies, so that they produce large number of that. Only one issue I want to flag here, which has not been flagged, that these companies will also put this in the private market. So there will be vaccines which will be available in the program. There will be vaccines which will be available to any individual who wants to get vaccinated in a private market. So here the problem of equity and ethics will come. So I cannot afford Moderna and Pfizer if I'm a poor. So I will wistfully look at that those who have Mercedes, they are having Moderna, Pfizer, and I'm not having it. So we need to carefully calibrate it, that we look at the equity and ethics in our country, where 600 to 800 million people are very poor. Indeed. They cannot afford anything. So this will be one major challenge which we will have to negotiate and find out. So that is where these our major committees which are in the government, they need to think on those things. And I agree with Dr. Aggarwal in this point, that they have a lot of other data which is available to them, which may not be available to us. So they might be creating policies. But at this time, this policy has been expressed by a lot of senior ministers and even Prime Minister, with a wish that we immunize as many people as possible when this surge is going on, if we really want to bring down this surge quickly.
Indeed. And as far as that aspect is concerned, as you rightly pointed out, Dr. Ganguly, that that'll be something which will be tackled by those who are tasked with it in terms of making policy. Obviously, that's a big challenge, but that will eventually be dealt with. Quick comment from you as well, Dr. Aggarwal, there on all those points, referred to by Dr. Ganguly in terms of the way we need to move ahead vis-a-vis the entire COVID vaccination program, given the options we have and given the challenges which we are facing right now?
As an epidemiologist and clinician, I still think the most important thing in this surge is to see that our hospital capacity, our ICU capacity, our oxygen capacities, our ventilator capacities are not overwhelmed, which means people who are likely to reach those stages of disease have to be the ones who have to be particularly vaccinated, because they are the ones who go and use those resources, and that is where the biggest problem is. Second, again, to emphasize, a large part of this surge, in my understanding, is because of people not following COVID appropriate behavior. Again, even after vaccination, we will not be able to go away from COVID appropriate behavior. Just because I am vaccinated against cholera or viral hepatitis does not mean that I would drink dirty water. I would still like my water to be clean, to be boiled, whatever. Same thing is true here. So I don't think we should look at a vaccine as a replacement for COVID appropriate behavior. That needs to be done. To control the outbreak, to control the surge, that is much more important, because the effect of that is immediate. If I take those behavior today, my risk goes down today. Whereas vaccine will take several weeks to act. I don't think with this surge, we have the time. Even if we could immunize everybody today, still that is going to take weeks to work. And we don't have that vaccine and we can't immunize everybody in 130 crore today. So COVID appropriate behavior is what is the need of the hour today.
Indeed, that's the golden rule and golden approach there, ensuring COVID-appropriate behavior. Thank you so much, Dr. Rakesh Aggarwal, as well as Professor N.K. Ganguly, for sharing your views and insights on this very important aspect. That's all we have in this episode. That was all about, the decision which has been taken recently to expand the pool of COVID vaccines we have, how that particular process, that particular strategy will work, what kind of impact it might have, as our experts panelists were pointing out. Obviously, this is a dynamic situation and dynamic decisions will be taken depending upon how the situation moves ahead from here onwards. But as our panelists were pointing out, let us also remind you before we take your leave about adhering to the COVID appropriate behavior. It's pretty much a 3-step simple process. First is you need to go ahead and ensure that you wear a mask at all times when you are in public spaces. Also, wash your hands regularly. Hand hygiene is really, really important in this battle against COVID pandemic. And also ensure physical distancing of at least 6 feet while being in public places. These 3 simple steps will go a long way in keeping you, your near and dear ones, as well as everyone else in the society safe and secure from COVID-19. We'll come back again tomorrow with a different aspect of this battle against the pandemic. Till then, keep watching. Thank you.